This episode of D-Suite Nation is sponsored by Hoffman's Deco Deli. Now at their brand new location at 444 Saginaw Street in the heart of downtown Flint, Heath Hoffman and his staff has provided the Flint community with deliciously fresh food for the past 11 years. Whether you're stopping in for lunch, looking for catering for your corporate event or meeting, or simply stopping in for a hot cup of coffee, Hoffman's has something on the menu for you. Hoffman's Deco Deli, guaranteed to make your day a little fresher.
Hello everybody, welcome to D-Suite Nation Show. We're at Daisy Duke's Bar in Flint on Fenton Road. The weather is bad here. My buddy Jason Turner graduated with me at Flint Central High School in '95, was nice enough to take time out of his day and drove an hour to get here. Lives over there by the airport. Belleville, New Boston, all that area over there. Yes sir. I used to work in New Boston. Before we get into our topics, the Crown Royal bag, which is the cuss jar.
Gotta address the cuss jar.
About last week, because Dan picked the topic, and I'm not supposed to be cursing from January for the rest of the year. I'm not supposed to say any cuss words. Since he took it upon himself to pick the topic, and I didn't even know about it. I mean, I kind of knew about it because he talked about Steve Levels every damn week. That's not a cuss word, right?
We'll let that slide.
I don't think that was. I think that's.
We discussed that damn.
That's
damn,
okay. All right. That's not a cuss word, but I'm not going to say that word anymore. Wow, almost.
I was going to say right to it.
As we're talking about it.
Myself right there. Okay. I just cussed when I'm preaching, not cussing. No. So. Dan, you want to take it from here?
Yeah,
I mean, what's going on with this bag and last week?
Ray made the resolution, even though we had the episode and the topic planned weeks in advance. It was supposed to be the day of the Michigan-Ohio State game. Even though it was supposed to be that day, Ray knew about the topic. He went ahead and made the resolution. I'm not going to curse. So those words came out of his mouth. He said it knowing that he was going to have to talk about Jim Harbaugh the very next week. So it was a big point of debate on last week's show. Steve was even surprised that you threw away the bag and said this show don't count. So it was a little point of contention, a little bit of debate. So we took it to our viewers. We put a poll up on our page, and the results came back 70-30 that Ray should pay up and put the money in the bag. So Ray, I went back and watched the show, right? Counted how many times you cursed. 10 times you cursed, okay? 10 times you cursed. A lot of shits, a lot of fucks in that episode.
But why was I cursing?
Because you hate Jim Harbaugh.
Hate is a strong word. I don't hate the guy. I don't hate the guy.
And like Steve said, there was a lot of lack of self-control on that episode.
Just, I'm tired of losing big games.
Yep.
I mean, we're losing too many of them. We're the only major program in America. When I say major program, I'm not talking about just Power 5 conferences. I'm talking about like your Alabamas, Florida States, Ohio State, like schools like that, or names like that. We're the only school in America that we can't win big games. The other schools win a big game once in a while.
Yep.
We don't win any big games.
Okay.
Ever.
So I came to offer you a deal. Okay. So 10 times you swore, that's $50 you got to put in the bag. Okay.
Yeah, I know, but that's not fair though. Because you should have changed the topic.
Okay.
You have the authority to change the topic.
Right, I agree. So let's. That's why I'm coming to you with a deal, right? That I say that you got to pay 50%, 25 bucks.
All right, Boo. Gonna ask you one more time. Pay up, don't pay up, or 50%.
Boo says pay the whole thing, $50.
Let's ask the guest that's on the show today.
You know what I say? I say it should be a grace period, man. It's a frustrating time with the Ohio game, man.
I told you he's a good. Didn't I tell you he was a good guy, a good dude?
No penalties.
No penalties.
So Satan himself over here. I knew he was going to say. I don't even know why I asked him. Man.
So we got a mixed crowd, right? 50.
Over there eating all them pretzel sticks and mushroom burgers and.
We got
chili cheese super nachos over there. You just sit over there and eat and leave us alone.
So we got one person that says you should pay the whole thing. Jason saying you should get a pass.
Yeah.
I offered you 50%.
Because he's a good person, that's why. That's something I would say.
Right? I offered you 50%. Our audience says, 7% of the audience says you should pay up. So You know what? I'll make you another offer. Okay. I'll say that you should pay $15.
Okay. I'll throw a $20 bill in there, and starting next week, there'll be a $20. That'll be it.
Okay. $20 in the bag going forward. Now, going forward, no more cursing, no matter what the topics, as long as you and I agree on the topic.
I'm not going to curse because I'm going to be the one either picking the topics or I'm going to agree to your topics. You went you took it upon yourself, which is fine, but, that's not something I would have talked about when I'm not supposed to be cursing. That's not.
Okay.
Because I don't like losing like that, man.
I know. I don't either.
Listen, if you watched it, Jason, if you watched the show from last week when Steve and I were talking Ohio State, Michigan, I want you to pay attention to like the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I want you to look at me on how I'm not even fired up. It's like how the way I have my head down and shaking my head, I look weak and pale. Did you see the episode? You see how hurt I am? How affected I am by that? It's affecting my health. It's starting to affect my health. I don't know. No. We're winners, man. We don't lose. We've lost big games before, but we've won a lot of big games. We're winners.
For sure.
Okay, $20. I agree with that, and we'll move on.
All right, $20 in the bag.
Okay, a lot of good topics today. I'm gonna do my best to try to keep it within the time constraints, even though it's gonna be difficult because all these topics are good. First one comes that I have on my list is Denard Robinson. Go ahead and talk about Shoelace, JT.
Shoelace is probably my favorite Michigan player, of all time. I saw him do some really incredible things, behind center. He paid his dues behind Tate Forcier a little bit in the beginning. Made some plays. Then once he started touching the ball, he was just electric. Once he took over, once again, he's the most dynamic player to ever touch the ball in the Michigan uniform, in my opinion.
Oh.
He's top 5, top 10 in rushing.
Most dynamic, huh?
Oh, absolutely.
Even above guys like Desmond Howard and Charles Woodson?
I think he's talking about from an explosive standpoint.
Explosive, could really score anytime he touches the ball.
Okay.
Hey, lots of respect to Desmond and the Heisman Trophy winners for sure. But if Denard drops back, it's a chance that he could throw it for a touchdown. It's a chance he could run it for a touchdown.
Right. Well, when I hear the word dynamic, I mean a guy that can do several different things in that explosive way, right? And those three guys are similar in that regard where, Desmond was a wide receiver and a kick returner. We talked about that on last week's episode. Charles Woodson was the same thing. If he got an interception, there was a good chance he was taking it to the house.
Yep.
Plus, he did some kick returning as well.
Yep. But you think about Denard, man, he's top 5 in rushing, top 5 in passing, probably top 5 in total touchdowns. So, and that's without any of their special team stuff. And he missed a lot of his senior year with the elbow injury, with the arm injury, where they made it so he couldn't really throw.
Well, his first play of his career as a true freshman, you mentioned Tate Forcier was our starter at the time. Remember, I think we were playing Western Michigan at the Big House. Remember, he scrambled and just took off from the 40-yard line. It was like his first play of his career. It was like one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. And then that run at Notre Dame. I think that was the following year.
Oh yeah.
That 75-yard scamper, the separation he got, man, that's one of those guys, man. Once he was in the open field, the separation he got, man. I love those track guys, man.
Me too.
Love those
Me
track
too.
guys.
Now, I always said Denard Robinson played the wrong position at Michigan. I always said if he would have played slot receiver or the H-back type, you would have been talking about this guy as an all-time great at Michigan. He would have been in that exact conversation with Desmond Howard, Charles Woodson as one of the greatest players at Michigan.
You know what? And I want to clarify. I'm not calling him the best player because obviously the standard in Michigan is winning in championships and those sorts of things, and with some challenges in that category with him during his time.
He beat Ohio State and won a BCS bowl.
But he beat Ohio State. Or Notre Dame, they couldn't wait for him to graduate. He did. He probably had. He owned Notre Dame. The night you think about the night game and the heroics that he displayed there. Yeah. Like I said, just in terms of watching him play, he was my favorite player to watch.
He's one of my favorite players too.
He played running back for Jacksonville when he got drafted into the league.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my thought was, had he gone to Florida or someplace, someplace down in the SEC and did similar things, I think the reaction to him would have been a little different too.
I definitely.
The style of quarterbacking that he brought to the table is something that really hadn't been seen under center in Michigan. Probably since the late '80s.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of just a running quarterback, someone that was dynamic.
I think Rich Rodriguez wanted him to be like another Pat White.
Absolutely, that was the mold.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the explosiveness. I think I agree with you on that. He's probably the most explosive player that I've ever seen in a Michigan uniform.
Yeah, I think if he would have played for one of those Southern SEC's teams like Florida or Florida State, I don't think he would have played quarterback. That may be the reason that he chose Michigan over other schools, that Michigan was going to allow him to play quarterback instead of putting him at running back or slot receiver or something like that.
Probably
That's
right.
possible. That's possible.
Probably right. Fab Five. Man, I could go on for days talking about the Fab Five. What's up with the Fab Five, JT?
You know what? The Fab Five is, that is my favorite college basketball team of all time. The cool thing about the Fab Five is that when they were freshmen at Michigan, I was,
True freshman.
True freshmen. We were freshmen in high school.
Yes, we were. Yep.
So, we were watching them. We were coming through, just getting into the high school thing. We're seeing them set the trends, the long shorts, the black socks.
Black sock, black shoe, yeah.
The bald head, the whole team came out with the bald head and
Yeah.
all sorts of things.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was the attitude, it was the confidence that they brought straight off. As soon as they got there, a couple of them started, then they worked it in. By the end of the year, they're testing teams like Duke. They're testing some of the all-time great teams as 18 and 19-year-olds. That was super exciting to me. Then to see them come back that next year, back to the Final Four, what they ended up playing Jamal Mashburn and those guys that year, if I'm not mistaken.
They beat Mashburn in the Final Four game, and then the North Carolina game was the timeout game. But
the infamous.
But
timeout
the best,
game.
Jamal Mashburn's team, that Kentucky team, they had went on like a big winning streak from like the middle of the season on. I think they were the #1 overall seed. Mm-hmm. When we beat them, I thought that we slayed the dragon. I thought it was over. I mean, that North Carolina team was good too, but it wasn't nearly as good as that Kentucky team that we beat.
Yeah.
And the game against the freshman year, not the national title game when we lost, but we played Duke in the regular season at the Chrysler Arena.
Yeah.
I think at that time, it was only, because that was early in the season, I think there was only 2 or 3 freshmen starting at that time.
Yeah.
And we took them the distance, man. I think we lost by 2 or 3 points. Christian Leitner and Bobby Hurley, Grant Hill, that loaded that, that's when we knew we had something special.
For sure.
And then when they started Jimmy King and Ray Jackson, it was that Notre Dame game. We played at Notre Dame. The first time that 5 freshmen had been. Oh man, that was a moment in time, man. That
team would go down as one of the greatest teams in college basketball history.
Absolutely.
Though that's never, until that point, it had never been done. Putting 5 freshmen on the floor at the same time. And you talk about all the good recruiting classes that like John Calipari brings in, all these one and done classes. The job that Steve Fisher did to bring those 5 guys in at the same time. It's got to go down as one of the best recruiting classes ever in college sports history.
Well, Juwan Howard, he was the first one to actually sign with Michigan out of the 5. He was the first. Now, they said that his grandmother was, he's from Chicago, but his grandmother was a big Michigan fan and wanted him to go to Michigan. He signed with Michigan. And Jalen Rose and Chris Webber had played together since they were children on up. So they kind of grew up together. Then we got the 2 Texas boys, Ray Jackson and Jimmy King. People ask all the time if they would have played UNLV, the Larry Johnson UNLV and Stacey Augmon. It's kind of hard to answer that question. I mean, because what if the Fab Five would have played together as seniors?
Right.
Oh, man.
Okay, what if they would have played together all 4 years? Mm-hmm. Then it would be seniors versus seniors.
Yes.
That would have been a game to watch, right there.
Great. The game to watch.
Oh, my
sure.
gosh.
The game to watch.
That game right there that I just talked about, UNLV, Larry Johnson, which is also one of my favorite teams.
Yes.
Teams that is not named Michigan. That basketball team is one of my favorite teams. We'll talk about them in a minute. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about dream matchups in sports, the examples I always use is I would have liked to have seen Pacquiao and Mayweather in 2007.
Right.
Okay, in 2007, I'd like to have seen that. Mm-hmm. I would have liked to see. I wish that Mike Tyson wouldn't have went to prison because he was getting ready to fight Evander Holyfield in 1991. That would have been a good fight. Who else? Michael's Bulls and like the Golden State Warriors. There's a lot of good matchups, man.
Oh, absolutely. You throw in a couple of those that Laker three-peat team. I like to see them against the Warriors too. See what Shaq, how would they deal with Shaq in that era, you know.
Or like even like when we talk about like UNLV and the Fab Five, you could probably throw like a Phi Slamma Jamma in there. You know, how would they have fared against them? That's a good matchup.
Oh, absolutely.
Those are a couple of electrifying
more,
teams.
Because that Phi Slamma Jamma, there's more to it than just Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon, man.
Although that in itself is enough, you know. They had some guys though.
Man, who's the one guy? I don't know if he was considered like the best player of that team. I think his name was Benny Anders. The guy that's the famous picture where you see him sitting on top of the rim, leaning against the backboard.
Yep, I remember that name. I watched a documentary about that.
Yeah.
And that guy, I think he actually lives in Detroit because they were trying to find that team.
Oh yeah.
And I think he lives in Detroit. Benny Anders.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
You know that team is one of the rare college teams that earned a nickname.
Yep.
And actually one of the better nicknames that around.
Yeah. If you've never seen the documentary, the 30 for 30 on the Fab Five, that's a must watch. That's a must watch. My favorite story from the Fab Five era is just how they got their start, right? Like that story how they came into that first practice and they just said, the five of us are going to take on you five, the current starters, right? The seniors and juniors that were the current starters of the team. And these five freshmen came in during their first practice and just mopped the floor with those guys. That's when Steve Fisher says, all right, maybe I should think about playing these guys together.
You know, you think about Steve Fisher, though, and I say the same thing about Calipari. Identifying and getting the talent is a big deal. But then not overcoaching them, not, putting them in a position where you do know you have the talent and you put them in a position to be able to just play and use that talent. That was as big a part of the success of that team as anything. Because, you come in, put them in the box, tell them to stay within the offense. Maybe they don't play the same way. But he saw what he had. He made the tough decisions. Some good players. You think about Eric Riley. He had a great career.
He led the league in Big Ten and I think rebounds or blocks or something. Yeah, he was a good player.
I'm saying,
Rob Pelinka was a lights out shooter.
Some really
James
good.
Bosco played his role pretty well. Michael Talley, man, that guy was a two-time Mr. Basketball.
Michael Talley, Leon Derricks was on that team.
Leon Derricks.
But you know what? That only made him a better team because with those freshmen starting and all those talented guys, seasoned guys coming off the bench, it only made him a better team.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep, he's exactly right because think about like how easy it would have been for them to transfer and say, I'm not going to take a backseat to the, whatever, but the fact that they sacrificed for the better of the team and then that's what you got coming off the bench, like these like guys that could start on probably just about any team in the country.
Without a doubt.
If they could have won a national title, could have been the greatest team of all time. Maybe that's anyone's guess, but yeah.
Two Final Fours in back-to-back years is a huge accomplishment.
And if you think about it, that team, those guys had roles that fit together perfectly. They each had a role. You had Weber and Howard, who were the dominant inside guys. Mm-hmm. Jimmy King, Ray Jackson. Ray Jackson was the defensive specialist.
Yeah.
Jimmy King was a good shooter.
Jimmy King was kind of like the highlight reel. Because he had good leaping ability.
Leaping, that electrifying guy, kind of like the Grant Hill type, right? He was a good shooter, plus he could attack the basket. And then Jalen Rose. Ray and I were arguing about this, about the greatest point guard in Michigan history. I always think about Jalen Rose. Jalen Rose, one of the most electrifying point guards ever. He could dish, he could shoot, and he could do it all.
I said Trey Burke is Trey Burke was a national player of the year.
That's a good call.
And
that's a great call.
But I don't have a problem with someone saying Jalen Rose.
No, because you got to throw in Ramil Robinson. You got to throw in Gary Grant. You got to
Gary Grant. Yep, I mentioned Gary Grant to him.
A couple of those names for sure. When you start talking about the top point.
Did Eric play with Gary Grant, or was Gary Grant after Eric? Your brother Eric?
I'm not. They may have overlapped by a year, but they may have just missed each other by a year also.
Okay. What was it? Cassie Russell was another guy I mentioned. Was he a guard?
As I understand it, yes. And I know he was one of my
Because
dad and my brother, their favorite players was Cassie Russell. This is the house that Cassie built.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, obviously, we weren't born when he played at Michigan because that was in the 60s. I do know of his history, though. Mm-hmm. And I don't know exactly what position he played. I don't know if it was the 1 or the 2 or if he played small. I really don't remember. But I know what he did. He was also National Player of the Year. He's the #1 overall pick. 3 Big Ten titles.
Yeah, that's huge.
And one of his Michigan teams lost to John Wooden's UCLA team in the finals.
See,
So if you were to put an all-time Michigan team position by position, Cassie Russell better be in there somewhere.
he's got to be in there. Like I said, I grew up,
Because
hearing that
I'm a
Nebraska
firm-
was the house that Cassie built.
When I do some of my all-time teams, of course I'm going to put people that I watched. But greatness is greatness, though, man. I mean, like Cassie Russell's got to be in there. I don't care how old you are.
You know what? Hey, I'm on the same thing. When I make all-time teams, I try to keep it to people that I got a chance to see play.
Yeah.
I respect the people that came before, and I got a chance to see the statistics and the accomplishments. And you have to respect it. You have to respect it.
Another thing, Dan, before we end the show later on, I am going to throw an extra little something in there. He is going to have to give me an all-time NBA team.
Okay.
And that always sparks controversy. On the
Wow.
show. Now I'm gonna give you a choice though at the end.
Okay.
You can either do your all-time 5 position by position, like I want this up, or you can just do just your best 5. Period.
Okay.
Don't matter what the position. I always do best 5, but I'll give you the option later.
Okay.
Okay. So you was a fan of Reggie Bush at UCLA, or not UCLA, USC and those Trojan teams.
Yes.
What's up with that?
Reggie Bush, he really got on my radar when Michigan played him in the bowl game. He touched the ball, like, man, who is this freshman? Like, he was like he was moving.
Game we lost. But go ahead. Yeah.
USC pretty much doomed Lloyd Carr. To be honest, getting to the Rose Bowl or wherever he ended up playing USC a couple times.
Yeah.
That'll do you in, especially with those teams that Pete Carroll was bringing in back then.
That USC team, man, back in those days, because him and Matt Leinart won the Heisman in 04, and then Bush in 05. Bush was doing things on the college. I'm just talking college only.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was like doing stuff on the college field that I only seen Barry Sanders do at Oklahoma State.
Really amazing stuff. I had to go back and watch some of that Fresno State game. The one where he had like,
it was like 700.
It was
500 something. Yeah, I remember that game.
He rushed for like 2.
I remember that game. That game was on like at 11:30 at night. I remember watching that game. I do remember that.
Yes, indeed. So he was watching him do that. Then get to the championship. It kind of soured it with the lateral. Who was that against? That they ended up losing the
Texas.
Against Texas.
Texas
They lost
in the
to Texas.
championship.
We touched a little bit upon that last week.
And Reggie Bush.
That was the Vince Young game, right?
Vince Young game. Yep.
The year before, 2 years before, they had won the last 2 national titles. In 04, they blew. 04, there was some controversy. They blew Oklahoma out, but Auburn was undefeated that year. That was a controversy on who's going to play USC. Is going to be Auburn or Oklahoma, because Auburn ran the table that year. Nothing to show for it.
I think that was Cadillac Williams and those guys.
Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown.
Ronnie Brown on that
Campbell.
squad. Yep. But they didn't want any parts of that USC team though.
Yeah, but they might have did better than Oklahoma. Oklahoma got blown out. And then the year before that, remember they shared a title with Nick Saban's LSU team.
That's right.
USC shared a title.
That's right.
And that set the stage. Vince Young. Now I'm kind of glad that I would have rather seen USC win that one because I like Reggie Bush and Leinart also.
I did too.
The only reason that I wanted Vince, the reason why I'm glad it turned out that way is because I remember what Vince Young did to us a year before.
Oh, man.
And everybody was talking about how we can't tackle and this and that. And to see him, Vince Young, the following year do that all year and then do that to USC.
It was a little validating, wasn't it? Like, it could have been anyone out
Once
there.
again, I'm talking about a bowl game where we lost.
Yeah.
But
yeah. But you know what?
I need to stop that.
Vince is a different animal, though.
I know. That's one of the greatest teams ever. The early 2000s USC. I cheered for them. I silently cheered for them.
Whether I cheer for them or not, I watched them for sure.
Think about this, Jay. When they played Texas in that title game, USC had 2 Heisman Trophy winners on the field at the same time. I don't know if I've ever seen that before.
No, I don't think so.
Because Bush had won the Heisman that year, and Leinart won it the year before. You ever seen anything like that, Dan?
No.
A team that has 2 different Heisman winners on the same team playing at the same time.
I can't recall a team
that's
ever been there.
That's amazing. That team was amazing. Yeah. Hey, Glendale White. Now don't forget about him.
Glendale White, yes indeed. I was going to say he's back up running back.
Glendale White.
Does it count that?
Glendale. No, I lived in Glendale.
Lendale White. Yeah. Guys on that team, Darnell Bing, Reggie Bush, Dwayne Jarrett, Ryan Khalil, Matt Leinart, Steve Smith, Lendale White. All those guys played in the NFL.
All of those guys.
Mike Williams might have been a little after that.
A little after that. Yeah.
I was going to ask Mike Williams on that squad.
But we
talking about
the Heisman Trophy thing. Does it count that? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Baker Mayfield win the Heisman Trophy at Oklahoma, and then Kyler Murray win it the next year for Oklahoma, even though they didn't play in the team together, right? Or no, they did. Well, because.
Yeah, but I don't think they were ever on the field at the same time.
Not at the same time,
you know what I'm saying? But
no.
I think I see what you're saying.
Right? Because Baker Mayfield was a transfer, and Kyler Murray was behind him. So Baker Mayfield started, and then the next year, that's when Kyler Murray got his start, right?
Yeah.
So they weren't on the field together at the same time, but back-to-back years, I believe, the Oklahoma quarterbacks won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, that's a lot of talent in the quarterback room right there. That's a lot of talent in the quarterback room.
But like in Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart's case, that game against Texas, Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy was in his living room, and Leinart's was in his living room. They already had the Heisman trophies.
Right. Yep.
But that's a good one. I wouldn't have thought of that. Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it.
But Reggie Bush was one of those players, just like we were talking about Shoelace and Desmond and Charles, one of the most dynamic players ever in college sports. I mean, he did it at the running position. He did it returning kicks. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a guy that every time you touch the ball, you're like, what's going to happen?
What's going to happen? And I'll say that,
I don't think I've ever seen anything like him in college.
The closest thing that I've seen.
We're talking about Vince Young, right?
No, we're talking about Reggie Bush.
Oh, Reggie Bush, yeah.
The closest that I've seen to Reggie Bush is Christian McCaffrey.
That Rose Bowl game against Iowa. Remember that game? Yeah.
I watched him,
That's a good one,
no,
man.
really. I mean, he in terms of making people miss out in the open field, catching balls out of the backfield, just straight explosive all the time.
Yeah.
He's the closest that I've seen to Reggie Bush.
As far as all around, you got a good point. There's guys like Barry Sanders who dominated from one position, but he did it from the running back position. Guys like Desmond Howard, who was a receiver, returner, but Reggie Bush, running, catching ball at the backfield, returning kicks, it's hard to compare him to somebody else as far as the level of dynamic athletic stuff that the guy does on the field.
That's true.
But it's that level of anxiety when he touched the ball that you felt when the Rocket had the ball. When they're kicking the ball to the Rocket. It's just when you're cheering against his team and you see him get the ball, it's a nervousness that comes about. Like, man, please kick the ball out of bounds.
My sister and I were at that game, 1989, opening game, number 1 versus number 2, Michigan. Yeah, you already know where I'm going with this. Where he ran those two back, where Corwin Brown was chasing him. Corwin Brown looked like a tortoise trying to chase him. I was at that game. Pouring rain, man.
One of the most difficult things to watch, right along with that Colorado game.
Ty Detmer winning the Heisman over Rocket because he broke all those records at BYU. What a joke!
What a joke!
That's another topic for another day.
And
that might be Rocket Ishmael Day.
That might be the guy who's as close a comparison as you can get is Rocket Ishmael, right?
Right about that. He
was a great receiver and a hell of a returner.
And they put him in the backfield some too.
Yep.
That 88 Notre Dame team. Until I seen the 01 Hurricanes, that 88 Notre Dame team was the best team I've ever seen. They had a lot of guys that played on Sundays on that team. Mm-hmm. Now, when Tim Brown won the Heisman, imagine Tim Brown on one side and Rocket on the other.
If you've been watching our show, then you've probably noticed the beautiful D Suite Nation logo. Well, let me tell you that logo was designed by Two Designs Custom Signs and Graphics. If you're looking for any kind of print or design work, Joe Shaw at Two Designs is a man to call. Whether it's custom t-shirts, signs, business cards, or vehicle graphics, Two Designs has the perfect solution for you. So give Two Designs a call at 810-936-1359 or email them at twodesignsflint@gmail.com or find them on Facebook. Two Designs, custom signs and graphics. Hit them up and they'll print you up.
Speaking of the Miami
Luckily,
Hurricanes,
those days are gone for Notre Dame.
I don't know if I could have a Rocket Ishmael topic because I'll be cursing in that one because I'm upset about the Heisman, Ty Detmer winning the Heisman. But that's just my opinion. Though. I think that's a lot of people's opinion. But
I'm with you on that. That was, it was a quarterback award. They handed it to him.
I know.
I'll tell you what.
know.
We all think back on college history. The Rocket is the one who those images stand out.
Yeah. Steve said the same thing that you just said now last week. He said that's basically a quarterback award. But yeah, Rocket, I may not be able to talk about that because this will fill up. I'll end up filling up too quick. Now, speaking of the Hurricanes that I just mentioned, 01 and 02, you a fan of them too?
Yes, sir. They I'll tell you what, they were so loaded. You think about the talent that was on that team. You started talking about just the back.
Man, just pull up the roster.
I'm already ahead of you. I did my show prep and I had this ready to go because this is an NFL roster.
It's an NFL roster.
I've never seen a team, maybe some of the more current Alabama teams,
right?
But that 01 and 02 Hurricane teams were literally NFL rosters. So you're talking about the starting lineups: Ken Dorsey.
Yep.
Didn't have a great career in the NFL, but had a career. Najee Davenport, Clinton Portis, Jeremy Shockey, Andre Johnson, Bryant McKinney. On the defensive side of the ball.
Bryant McKinney, that was the offensive lineman, wasn't it?
Offensive lineman.
I think he was invited to New York City, I think. Or like he finished 8th. He might have not been in New York City, but he finished like 8th in the Heisman. One of their offensive linemen.
Yeah, that's doing a lot right there.
Oh, man.
But then on the defense, you got William Joseph, Jerome McDougal, DJ Williams, Jonathan Vilma, Ed Reed, Philip Buchanan.
Hey.
Man, that's crazy.
Hey, and some of those guys you think about, Kellen Winslow was a backup on that team.
He was a backup.
Okay.
He was a backup.
Some of the backup guys ended up coming up and going to the league also.
I'm getting goosebumps just reading that roster and be like, how amazing is that roster?
Sean Taylor was on that team, if I'm not mistaken.
In my lifetime, yeah.
Playing behind Ed Reed.
Did Sean Taylor play with them?
Sean Taylor, yes. He didn't start that. He didn't start that year, though.
That's the best college team of all time. I've been saying that for years anyway.
He didn't
now that
start.
Dan is like giving us all the information, who can argue that?
I'm saying you got Shockey on the.
Sean Taylor didn't start for that 2001 team. He started on the 2002 team.
Can you hear these names that he's saying?
He didn't start.
Oh.
He didn't start. What does that say?
Yep.
Yeah, you got all Americans on the bench waiting their turn.
Behind future All-American, behind future Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you go fast forward to then you go to the 2002 roster, right? Some people leave, and then listen to the guys who fill in. We still got Ken Dorsey at quarterback. Willis McGahee steps in for Clinton Portis.
Right.
Kellen Winslow II. Carlos Joseph. Vernon Carey.
Fire Harbaugh and hire Larry Coker.
And then on defense, Antro Roll steps in. And then Sean Taylor.
See, I always obviously Michigan's my team, first and foremost. But I've always had that adopted team. And I've always liked the Hurricanes because I go back to the Catholics versus the convicts, man, in the late 80s. When Jimmy Johnson was coaching, Michael Irvin and Benny Blades and all them, Alvin Harper, Steve Walsh. I used to love those Miami. Remember they used to hang out with Two Live Crew all the time with the green jackets on, man.
Yes,
said
sir.
Miami out, man.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I always loved Miami. If I lived in Florida, that's who I would support.
And then on that 2002 team, you had guys rotating in like Vince Wilfork, Leon Williams. The list goes on and on.
Yeah. Anybody who talks to me about college football, when we talk about the best teams, I always tell people, I'm like, look, man, the 88 Notre Dame team is the best I ever seen until I seen the early 2000s Miami Hurricanes. And I always tell them, I can't name every single name. I could probably name 12 or 13 of them. I said, look at the roster if you want to have a good laugh. Just look at their roster. It's comical, man.
You want to talk about, you know how
That
dominant.
would be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
you're right.
Imagine in high school, basketball, Flint, if Terry Furlow, Craig Tucker, Eric Turner, Glenn Rice, Charlie Bell, Justice Thigpen Sr., imagine if they were all on the same team.
Right.
That's what that Miami Hurricanes.
That's the equivalent.
So you know how dominant the Alabama running back stable has been as of recent years, right? Like almost every one of them goes plays in the NFL. Listen to this running back stable of these Hurricane teams. You got guys like Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee, Najee Davenport, Frank Gore.
And some of those guys wouldn't even
Gore's
touch
still
the
in the
field.
league, ain't he?
Yes,
He's still in the league. That dude's the Energizer battery. He just keeps going.
People forget about Clinton Portis too. Willis
I know
McGahee,
it.
he got hurt in that. Hey, basically that his injury probably cost him that second national championship.
Yeah. Well, he put us on the spot last week at the end of the show. He said 97 Michigan versus 02 Ohio State. And to me, Woodson's a deciding factor for me. I don't care how loaded you are. But I had to give Ohio State credit because they beat those guys in the title game. And they were on like a 29-game winning streak or something like that. Like they not only were talented like that, but they were like winning the way like Trevor Lawrence is winning now. And then they were able to beat that's impressive, man.
No, that was that Claret Ohio State team, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Maurice Claret, Chris Gamble.
He was super dynamic.
Yep, San Antonio Holmes, great team.
And, but they even with that, they really if they don't call the pass interference call, they go ahead and Miami goes ahead and close the deal on that.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that.
6 players from that 2001 Miami Hurricane team won a Super Bowl. 6.
Damn.
That's wild.
Jonathan Vilma, Jeremy Shockey, Vince Wilfork won multiple.
Big Vince.
Joseph, Antro Roll, McGahee, and Ed Reed.
Wow. You know what? Just comment about that '97 Michigan team. That Michigan team would match up well against anyone because they did have the strength up front on the line on both lines, but defensively, obviously their corners were dynamic. Their safety play was great, but those linebackers could fly. Those, when you talk about Dhani
Jones
and Ian, those guys
Ian Gold,
really run from the inside. So even with the way the football has changed, I think that those guys will still be able to run with some of those, some of the spread schemes that you'll see now, and but yet still be starting up against the defense to kind of stifle that.
Yeah.
I like it. I wouldn't make a prediction on that game, but I certainly wouldn't be afraid to pick Michigan.
I wouldn't be afraid to pick them either. Woodson, man, I hate to just keep saying Charles Woodson.
It's hard not to.
Like basically, the guy again, huh? Damn, him again. Anyways, remember he's that one guy when George Miller's here, standing there. Anyway. every time, man. This happens every time. That's okay though. That's all right. See, that just threw me off. What was I talking about?
Fred's got our back this time. Fred will make him keep his distance.
I know. Just act like you're at the rain check. How you would act there. If I need you to act like that, just act like that, right?
You were talking about Charles Woodson.
Yeah.
Being a difference maker in terms
basically like what we said about like Reggie Bush and the way he played the game. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about Woodson, but probably I would put him a couple notches above Bush. Maybe not statistically, but just command presence. I've never seen nothing like that in my life.
The one thing,
I mean, I think wasn't Woodson. He was like first team All Big Ten as a freshman.
that's what
First team All Big Ten as freshman year.
That's what happens when you lock up Terry Glenn as a true freshman.
They were the same type of player on either side of the ball. Like you couldn't get more dynamic as a player as a running back than Reggie Bush did, and then you couldn't be more dynamic as a defensive back, returner, all-around player as Charles Woodson was.
Absolutely.
Charlie Ward. a two-sport star that really don't get talked about a whole lot. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and speak on Charlie Ward.
You know what, Charlie Ward, man, I have a Charlie Ward is one of my favorite players because, again, the two-sport thing, to be a Heisman Trophy winner and lead his team to a national championship in football, and then turn around and get drafted in the NBA, and then have, 10, 12-year NBA career. That is amazing. I'm pretty sure that he did at some point, well, maybe twice, he got drafted in baseball as well. So, you think about how good of an athlete you really have to be with that. You think about that's the Warwick Dunn. Those are the Warwick Dunn Florida State teams also. Kes McCorvey, some pretty dynamic playmakers there.
Yeah.
But when I think about seeing them in the shotgun, that was when we used to go outside in the on the field or in the backyard or wherever we played on the street. We all wanted to be in the shotgun like Charlie Ward was. We all wanted to make guys miss, with nice sharp moves like Charlie Ward did.
Charlie Ward, he's truly one of the best athletes just ever. And the reason why I say that, like you said, the guy after he won his Heisman Trophy. Now he's playing now he's a point guard for the New York Knicks, battling against Michael Jordan in the playoffs all the time.
Yeah.
Chasing him around. And he had a long NBA career.
Yeah, I don't think he gets enough credit. He should be talked about in the likes of the Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
He played let me see, when he was at Florida State when he played basketball. He had a couple good notable players that you would know.
Sarah,
Bobby
Sarah, yeah.
Bobby
Sam
Sarah.
Cassell was
Yeah.
on that team.
Two
They
S's,
played
two
together.
L's.
He was a good player I wouldn't even use the word good. He was a great player in both sports. Like he was obviously he got drafted as a point guard in the NBA, but when have you ever heard that about a player winning the Heisman Trophy in football and say, you know what, I'm going to go play basketball.
I'm going to go play basketball.
And then
Well, he didn't get drafted though in the NFL.
He was probably...
Well, that was the reason why he didn't get drafted. He said, I'm going to play basketball.
Did he? He said he had announced that he was going to play.
He said,
okay.
dude, hey, don't draft me. I'm going to play basketball. Okay. So he had made it known because everybody was asking him, what are you going to do? What sport are you going to play? And I believe he made an announcement. He's like, I'm going to focus on basketball.
No, he should certainly be, mentioned in the lights of the great all-around athletes. Like you said, the Deion Sanders, the Bo Jacksons. You want to throw in what's the play quarterback for the Eagles, Syracuse?
Donovan McNabb.
He played basketball.
Tony Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Tony Gonzalez. You think about those types of two.
But there's a lot of tight ends in the NFL play basketball in college.
You remember when Donovan McNabb, when he was at Syracuse when they played Michigan?
We all remember that.
Oh man.
You know what? We actually were getting ready to play them. We played them the year after, and so we watched the film from the Michigan game of that year.
Okay, Toledo.
Yes, he is. Hey, he was so
Jake
dynamic.
played at
out
Toledo.
there.
I forgot to mention that, but yeah, he played at the University of Toledo.
And he was so dynamic. He was so dynamic out there.
And throwing touchdown passes to Marvin Harrison in college.
But it takes a special kind of athlete to be able to play two sports, right?
Oh,
And although
at a high level.
Although
Yeah.
Charlie Ward didn't play in the NFL, I believe he could have.
Oh, yeah.
If the seasons didn't overlap, if logistically he could have done it, I believe he would have done it. Mm-hmm. But it would just so happen that Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson, they were able to play both sports because there was very little overlap in the two seasons. But it takes a very special athlete to be able to play at a high level two sports like that.
Florida State in the 90s. Sometimes I get the years confused in the 90s because they had so many great players. Like in the early 90s, before Charlie Ward. Remember Casey Weldon was their quarterback. Ampley playing with Ampley.
Mm-hmm. I remember they came up to the big
Terrell
house.
Buckley. Remember Terrell Buckley? Remember they
Yeah,
played at
they
the
came
big
up
house
to the big house. Yep.
and blew us out at the big house.
Yeah, that hurt.
But and then when Charlie Ward was there, you mentioned Ward Dunn. I think Derek Brooks might have played there at the time.
He was on that team.
Derek Alexander, Andre Wadsworth. Man, another team loaded.
Super loaded.
But I got to get your opinion on something. I'm gonna need you to listen up too, Fred. I need your opinion, and Dan, obviously I need your opinion too. The year he won the Heisman in '93, okay, Florida State, they won the national title that year also. They beat Nebraska that year. Now, here's what I'm asking you guys. That year, Florida State lost one game that year. They went like 12-1 or 13, whatever the record was. They lost one game that year. They lost to Notre Dame. And that number 1 versus number 2. You know, they're both 7-0 or whatever. They lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame also finished the year with 1 loss. How come Notre Dame didn't have the right to play in the national title? Okay, look, you have 1 loss. He has 1 loss. You beat him. But he's playing in the title game and not you. Is that, I mean, I'm talking about Florida State. Should that have been Notre Dame playing in the title game? They beat Charlie Ward and them head to head.
It would
they
depend.
Finished with the same record.
I can't recall what was going on back then. It was a long time ago. I don't have the memory that you did. But back then, they chose the participants for the championship game way differently than they do now.
But how do they think Florida State's better than Notre Dame when Notre Dame beat them?
Maybe at the time, at the end of the season, when the selection, maybe Notre Dame was beating people more. Maybe they were more impressive. Maybe they, you know what I mean? That's how they did that back then. Who was hot at the end of the season?
Okay, I'm not certain on the date. But if you check the date, 1993, Notre Dame versus Florida State, I think that game was late in the year.
I'll have to look.
That game was either like at the end of October or was it early November?
That might be.
It was late in the year. That wasn't like a September game. But I don't know. Charlie Ward was the best player in the country, but I'm talking about the Florida State team. I think Notre Dame should have been in the title game. Who, Notre Dame? Who was the quarterback? Was it Rick Meyer?
Rick Meyer, Ron Paulus.
Ron Paulus? It was one of the two, yeah. You might be right, Fred. I think it was Ron Paulus, I think.
This says that year.
Ron Paulus, you talk about one of the most overhyped.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, Lord, have mercy.
Don't get me started on that.
Ah.
Don't get me started.
This says, the internet says that year, the Bowl Coalition had ranked Nebraska number 2 and Florida State number 1.
Okay.
They were the ACC champ in the Orange Bowl. It was just the way the Bowl Coalition kind of ranked them, even though it says here that Notre Dame was ranked number 1 in a couple of the polls, or number 2 in a couple of the polls, that it was just the Bowl Coalition's, you know how they do the voting, and sometimes maybe Florida State was hotter at the end of the season than Notre Dame was at that time, or, you know, they were conference champs, so when you're all conference champs, they just look at what you did recently. It was a shit show back then as far as choosing a national championship.
Yeah, it's much better now for sure. And you know, Notre Dame, they've gotten a few gifts since then to make those, you know,
That's
those
true.
BCS type games. So
That's true.
They'll be all right.
In my humble opinion, Fred, if we have the same record and I beat you earlier, I'm better than you. That means I'm better.
That's the reason you play the game.
That's just my opinion.
But that's,
If we're both 20-1 and I beat him, I'm better than him.
right. But we're not going to get into it now. But we could
Once
have
again, I go by wins and losses.
I hear that. That's how you play
we
the
could
game,
have
right?
a
That's how
whole
you
show on how the BCS and how national champions are decided. It's a shit show now. It's always been a shit show. But that's the problem with the NCAA and how they pick not only the participants but the national champion. Well, now it's the championships decided on the field, but the participants, it's always been about opinion. That's the one thing that turns me off about college football is the champion is decided about wins and losses and who does better on the field. It's first based on opinion to get in, and then you can show it on the field.
Should carry some weight if it comes down to that. If two teams have the same record, both have 1 loss, basically the scenario I just gave you. I mean, if I beat you and we're both 10-1, I think my team is better. I don't know.
No.
How is he better than me when I beat him?
That's why you play the games.
Nobody is more qualified to know about winning than you. You know what I'm saying? And this is Cliff Turner's son, man. Eric Turner's brother. You know what I'm saying? No.
But that was the problem. If you had the top 5 teams, right, top 4 teams, and they're champion of their conference, all with similar records, how do you decide who's better, right? So that was the problem back then. You could have the top 4 teams be the champion of their conference, all be How do you rank them 1 through 4? Mm-hmm. Right? How do you decide who's number one without, hey, there's 4 undefeated teams. They're all their champion conference or champion of their conference. And that was a problem back then. They just like decide who's number one and they give them the championship.
It's like you said, and a lot of that has to do with the opinions and the projections that happen before they even step on the field as a team that year.
Right.
So where you start has a lot to do with where you
The
finish.
preseason rankings are total bullshit to me.
Yeah.
They should wait till like at least week 6 before they even get ranked.
I agree with that fully.
Now, the following year, Penn State got snubbed.
They sure did.
Undefeated. And Nebraska was the outright national champions. Outright, 94. But Penn State was 12-0, and nothing to show for it. So people criticize, get on our case in 97 for being co-champions, like that don't count.
No, that
We'll
counts.
tell that to Penn State in 94. They were undefeated and didn't even get half of it.
No.
Yep, that's the same reason we had to share the championship in '97. It was never right. It still isn't perfect. It's better now, but it still isn't perfect. But what are you gonna do?
The 14 playoff is a much better format. There's always going to be a little debate, no matter how many teams they add. But I think it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 teams that really have a chance to beat 2 or 3 of the best teams in consecutive weeks.
Yeah.
What do you think of Jim Harbaugh? I got to ask you that, even though it ain't on my list. And you don't have to bash him. Just
No, I'm not
what
gonna
do you
bash
think of
him.
the
I'm not
job
gonna
he's
bash him.
doing?
I'm not gonna bash him.
Well, where's our program, in your opinion?
I'm not going to bash them. Hey, it's
Because you're a part of the Michigan family too,
Absolutely.
just like Fred is. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And,
Well, hold on. I am too because my sister's a University of Michigan graduate, Ann Arbor.
There
So
it is.
we got three. Man, I didn't realize that. Got the Michigan family in here. But go ahead.
we're affiliated for sure. But you know what? When I get frustrated, I think about the couple years before he had gotten here, and things weren't going in the right direction in my opinion before he showed up. He did a whole lot of things to put the program back in a positive light. He did a ton in terms of publicity and bringing attention to the program.
Yes.
When you
he
start
agrees with me.
when you
Thank
start
you.
talking about the satellite camps and going into people's backyards and agitating them. When you talk about the spring break types
Oh
of
yeah,
trips.
when he's
you talk
climbing that tree. Oh, I forgot about that.
when you talk about all of those sorts of things, he's when I look at the field, I see better players than were being brought in a few years ago. I see we still having some challenges trying to get this quarterback thing together. The running back situation is a much better place than it's been in a while.
Yes, I agree with that.
Although I really like backs that can make people miss. They're starting to bring in some smaller, more agile type of players, which is I think something
Good
that we've
vision,
been
good
missing.
instincts. Yeah,
Now, Ray,
Really looking forward to seeing Chris Evans come back.
I'm gonna need you to slide that bag right in front of you, just as a reminder that we're talking about Harbaugh, but you still can't curse. Okay?
Well, I probably
Yep,
should have.
so you can see
you
it.
cussed 3 times, and that could have.
Yeah,
I
but
could
I
have
didn't
accidentally cussed.
But I didn't make a
I
resolution.
know, but I'm just saying that could influence me or make me. Go ahead.
All in all, man, I think
Cuss today.
from the time that Harbaugh stepped on campus to now, the program is in a much better place than it was. I don't think it's where any of us that really cheer for Michigan want to see it yet. But beating Michigan State a couple years is a really good start for me. Trying to figure out this Ohio State conundrum is the next big thing. No matter what you do during the year, you had a really good year when you look back at it. A couple bad quarters ended up probably costing them, a game or two. Penn State, you think about Wisconsin just coming out flat, but the Penn State not really getting started until late. You change that around, the season could be completely different. But the bottom line is the taste is going to be the same if you lose against Ohio State and then turn around and lose the bowl game.
But even though the Michigan State thing, that's kind of a false positive to me, because even though we're 3-2 against them, I think only one of those teams that we beat were halfway decent.
Yeah, they didn't. When Michigan State was beating Michigan, when it was Brady Hoke or Rich Rider, and they're not putting any actions by their.
I think it was
their,
the year after the trouble with the snap game that when we won in Michigan State. I think that was the only team that was kind of halfway decent. Was that the game that Peppers took that fumble back like 95 yards or something like that? Or was that the year?
2016.
Okay.
That was the year Michigan State went 3-9.
Yeah, that was 2 years after that. But that first year, there was the game in Ann Arbor, the trouble with the snap game. The next year, it played in Lansing, and we beat them then. That was the team that was the only halfway decent team. The other 2 teams were garbage. So it's kind of a false positive.
Michigan
Man, we'll
State
take it. We'll take it.
They were 3-9 that year.
That's a halfway decent.
Oh,
We'll take it.
3-9 is considered halfway decent.
No, but maybe it wasn't that year. But maybe it wasn't that year. But only one of those.
I know what you mean. I know.
One of those years was
I know what you mean.
a halfway decent team.
Kid catches a punt and gets it off. Even if it's a 10-yard punt, it's still 4-1. That's really what the series should be. You're right. They've had some struggles around there, and they're still having struggles. But no sympathy for them, man. Get that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
One more thing. I'll talk about the Jim Everett thing after we're done. Before we go, talk about the team that you coach now, real quick.
I have a travel team called the Michigan Trailblazers. Right now, we're playing, 3rd through 5th graders, and we have between 10 and 12 kids we're building right now. We started beginning of last year, and we've come a very, very long way. We play out of we represent Belleville, Canton. We play out of those areas, but we go into the city of Detroit. We come out to Saline. We played out there, some great competition and some great tournaments, and so I certainly want to send a shout out to the whole Michigan Trailblazers family. Got my young crew, 3rd graders. They're gonna be super dynamic. A couple 4th graders that are really talented, and my 5th graders. We're adding to that group as well. So we're looking forward to playing the best competition we can find.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world. I know you're gonna do good, man.
Thank you.
Because of the Turner name, man. You guys are basketball people, man, and the game is a lot better with you guys involved in it. And I know when you're old and done with it, I know you'll pass it on, and the Turner name will live on forever. And I'm looking forward to having Eric on the show, man. I'm really excited. I'm glad that you told me that he said he would do it, right?
Yes, he did. He did.
Wow. I don't know what rabbit you pulled out of the hat, but I appreciate it, man, because I can't wait to have him on the show.
Hey, you're my guy, Ray, man.
Oh,
so,
man, we're going to be talking some old school stuff.
Yes.
And you let him know that I know my stuff,
Oh, I already let him know.
Because, I go based on the stories I heard from, like, my dad and my uncles and all them. So we're going to get in that. But JT, man, thanks for making the drive, man. This was a lot of fun. I can't believe that this show went, man. These shows are going by fast, it seems like.
An hour can go by fast when you're talking about stuff you truly enjoy.
Good topics today.
Yes, indeed.
I don't think I argued with him today. I don't think I argued with him today.
No, it's a good show.
That I can recall.
You know what? Maybe I'm the peacemaker.
First time ever. It's because of this thing. Once I stopped cussing.
Yeah.
See, last week's episode, that's his fault.
But you know what? Last week's episode, we didn't even realize we went 2 hours.
2 hours and like 20 minutes.
And
like almost 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I can see.
And to our viewers, 2 hours might seem like a long time. And it's like a movie, but
I had like 4 tall boys.
if you watch it,
It's easy.
he couldn't even hold his bladder
really
at the end of the
entertaining.
show.
You gotta watch that episode. Last week's is a little different than the other ones. We're kind of it's competitive banter.
But we went 2 hours and didn't even know it. But it's well worth the watch.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Jay, man, once again, man, thanks for coming, man. God bless the Turner family and our classmate Mark Clements, who ain't here, man. I tip my hat to him. God rest his soul, man. He would have been here hanging out with us.
Absolutely.
But safe travels back to Belleville, and good luck with your team. And now that I know who they are, man, I'm going to start keeping up with them. And I'm going to have you on the show again. We're going to talk about that.
Sounds good. And I have to say this, that I can't wait to see you and Boo and all the rest of the guys that we play with take the place in the Flint Hall of Fame when it's our time. I'm putting that Flint Central '93 football team as the best team to ever play football.
Absolutely, yeah. Anybody who wants to discuss that with me, they're more than welcome to sit in the chair.
Yes.
Usually that ends up happening. They always get mad and stuff. I don't get mad. Keep my cool because I know we're better. But next week we're going to honor Davison High School, the state champions. I think we're going to have Luke Edgar and Latrell Fordham. I also invited Caleb Smith and anybody, whoever wants to come, just come. I'm going to promote that big, so we got a couple state champions in the house next week. So on behalf of the D-Suite Nation, Fred Jackson showed up today, and Jason Turner from Belleville, my classmate, and Dan Hutchinson, who always does a great job.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you know when new videos released.
Yep. And hope you enjoy the show, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye, everybody.